All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. And I at this time, I do want to honor the Miwok, who are the First Nation of this land, and to honor their stewardship. It's just very appropriate that we have an image of Pyramid Lake, is it?
Susie Lake.
Susie Lake, okay, which is Sierra Miwok territory. My husband and I happen to live up in the Sierra Miwok land, in which our tribal chair, Crystal Martinez O'Leary, who's a graduate of our doctoral program, and one of the big reasons why I'm doing this work, we happen to live right in that territory of our people. So it's something that's become very personal for us, in that when you have that connection to the land, that suddenly you see everything very differently. First of all, I want to start out by thanking Elizabeth Lyles, who's not here, but she was the one who I understand made the nomination, and also for the committee who came together and made this particular award happen. I have to tell you that when I got the email, it was very, very moving. Sorry. Because when I saw Julie's name, so first of all, it was a remembering that she's not here. She's not here with us right now. So that was painful. And then secondly, it was like, oh my gosh, I got this award that is attached to her name, and recognizing what an honor that is. And for those of us who are, it's interesting, I'm now considered senior faculty now, and I look at junior faculty, and you have so much hope and excitement at seeing new faculty walking around and knowing that that the college will be well and the future will be well when you see these young folk coming up. And with Julie, I knew that there were going to be incredible things coming from her in terms of what she was going to be doing. But I want to share just some of the interactions that I had with Julie that were particularly touching for me. And so one of the things that I came to understand quickly was her area of expertise. And I was chairing a doctoral dissertation from Dr. Belinda Frost called The Effects of Educational Policy on Criminal Peer Reviews. And Dr. Frost, in her acknowledgement, she said Dr. Raskauskas was indispensable in helping me acquire IRB approval for my highly at-risk dissertation. Dr. Raskauskas' expertise of bullying and willingness to meet and discuss difficult topics was extremely helpful. So you take someone like Julie, whose intellect, her insight, her depth of character, her humor, and her wit, okay, was absolutely cutting sometimes. And for those of us who sat in the faculty meetings with her, and her knowledge of Robert Rules of Order and so forth, and then knowing when faculty, we start spinning sometimes, and all of us have doctorate degrees, and everything that we have to say, requires at least a 10-minute oration on whatever topic that we have, and anybody else's expertise in the room is always better than the next one, so you have to hear everybody out. And she would just cut us all, just get to the point, folks, let's move on. Okay, we're voting on whether we're going to have white wine or red wine at the next event. It's not that big of a deal. So she always had a way of putting us in our place, which I admired about her, and was sometimes even reluctant to open my mouth when I would hear her take off on topics in which she was so moved by, which when I found out about the book, and seeing right away some of the opening pages where hitting right on the topic of who is approached and who is bullied, and seeing that top-down sort of behavior, that she was serious about protecting marginalized people. So she wasn't afraid to tackle difficult topics and engage in those discussions. And so with that, as I was recently putting together a video that we're doing for the doctoral faculty, and I was sitting in the doctoral office with Alex, and I saw, we were looking at a YouTube video from a presentation that I was given with Connie Reitman Salas, who's the executive director of the Intertribal Council of California, and Susan Olson, who was my former research assistant, and she's now adjunct faculty in our teacher ed program. And we were doing a presentation. It was a brown bag presentation on Indigenous America, resilience, resistance, and persistence, which back in that was 2015, and we were still trying to get off the ground, just getting California Indian voice noted in our circles. And so you'll see the presentation on YouTube, and about 5 minutes in, you see Julie walking in this recording. And it's really touching because you see her walk in, and I remember her asking questions throughout our presentation. She stayed afterwards, and then from there the communication went to her requesting journal articles and information that she could use in her own classrooms. So as a child development professor, she was looking at how do I use this material from the First Nations who have been ignored and undervalued and not valued at all. And what do you have, Rose, to give me so I can use this information and put it right into my classroom this spring coming? So she was somebody who positioned herself in a way to make a difference and was going to do it right away. And I'll never forget, I went to Anna right after we found out that Julia passed away, and you had to get somebody to take her place, and you know, giving you, this is what Julie wanted in that particular class. So for her vision, it was a sense of, it's not just about research that goes up on a shelf, it's about what I do here to enact change. So one of the last communications I had with Julie was, first of all, commending her on her, she did the little bell thing, what was that? Yeah, she was on this group where they played the bell choir, and thanking her for bringing beauty to us all. And then giving her an article on 10 things teachers should never do when teaching Native kids. So Julie, I saw her bridging and healing in a very spiritual and humanistic way. And for me, this journey in terms of the work that we're doing now, it actually started for me from tears that I saw from a gentleman at the California Indian Conference that I attended in 2013. So back to now Dr. Krista Martinez-O'Leary, who invited me to present with her here at the conference that was being sponsored at Sac State. And I went to a presentation on the California missions being discussed by California Indians. And, you know, we all go to conferences and we all go to these presentations aside from our own, but I have yet to see this sort of pain and anger as I've seen when I go to presentations done at the California Indian conferences. And with this particular presenter, and I can't remember who the presenter was, but I remember that he was human enough to start crying and talking about the pain of having his son have to create a mission in his 4th grade class and what that experience was like for him as a parent. And I remember thinking to myself, and I'm so glad, Mimi, that you're here, because I remember saying to myself, you know what, this is something we can do something about this. Now, I'm so glad that, you know, Dr. Brock is here. Dr. Brock, by the way, and I have to tell you that Dr. Brock is a rock star in our family. It was a few years back when my daughter was in undergrad in Berkeley College of Music, getting her degree in music therapy. And it's just a little aside here. And I had sent her a copy of, I think it was the 2nd edition of my first book. And then she calls me, she goes, man, I just read this wonderful publication. And I'm thinking, oh, wonderful, she read my work. She goes, it's this Dr. Brock. He had this great article. And she goes, do you know him? I said, you talking about Stephen? So she couldn't be here today. She's in San Diego at a training for victim witness programs. She works in domestic violence. But when she found out you were being honored here today, I have to get your autograph on the program and yeah, get some points. But back to those tears. When we cry with sorrow, there's prolactin that comes, and you have to remember I have a counseling background. Prolactin is released in our tears of sorrow. And once you cry, it allows us to reset. So similar to when I received a notification from Dr. Garcia Nevadas, those tears came down, recognizing, oh my God, that's right, Julie's not here with us. But then afterwards, it's okay, reset. So the same when I saw those tears falling, that I thought to myself, I know people like Mimi Coughlin, I know people that we can do something about this. And so from there came the journey of how do we respond to this? And with that, recognizing that when we don't cry, when we disassociate from one another, and we no longer have any empathy for one another, that's when it creates the us-them. And when you look at genocide that happened right here in California, in which many people don't even want to own that word in California, but when you go to the California Indian conferences, they speak very openly about what transpired. And Dr. Brendan Lindsay, who is one of our professors here, when I read his book, Murder State, and to read about what transpired, it took me a while to get through that book because it's very painful. It's a painful history that we have in California. So rather than to freeze, okay, because we could freeze and do nothing about it, or we can say, what do we need to do to rectify this? Because when we do the us, them, and we other one another, as we see happening even in today, in which we're talking about wedges, we're talking about building walls, that we still need to rectify the walls that were built psychologically and physically years ago right here. So with that, in terms of the reset, that when we've gone to that place of disassociation, that we've now infringed on our spiritual connection with one another and with our humanity with one another. So all the efforts that we make in which we now honor, acknowledge, and bring forth the voice of California Indians is the way by which to heal. Okay? So when we've had genocide here and omitted them entirely from California history, that's been the way in which we've eradicated them. So for me, I've been told by our spiritual leader, Herbert Cobb, that my job is to open doors, okay? And that's why I have a doctorate degree, is to open doors for others, okay? Whether it's in mentoring junior faculty or whatever I need to do to bring others forth. And so how do you open doors to bridge the spiritual and the humanistic chasm that we've had here with the original nations of this land? Well, you do similar to what my friend here, Dr. Porter, did at the Multicultural Conference, in which she invited a Miwok elder to come and open the conference. You do what Dr. Biaget is doing, in which she herself has said, we're going to have this California Indian Vedic curriculum now presented to our students in the spring in our social science methods classes. So being able to look at what was before vertical violence, in which California Indians were negated, and having to deal even with the horizontal violence, because what's been left in the wake has been a lot of distrust, right? And as we work with that distrust and we get challenged, and I know Mimi and I have done some work together where we get challenged, is the sense of, let me approach this with compassion and also with mindful wonderment to understand where your pain comes from. And then we move forward. And be thankful that I've had the opportunity to be in a place to even be criticized for what I'm doing. Okay? And that's okay. That's okay, because that's how we heal. And as we listen to one another and we remove the wedges, we eradicate the walls, we honor their voices, we value their history, their stories, then we can all be humanized by the experience itself. So when I think of some of the people that have stepped forward, and I left a few of these out, there's just a few tables out there that have these. You'll see here, this is our second California Indian Curriculum Summit. that is being sponsored here at Sac State. I have to give a shout out to the doctoral program. I saw Dr. Helig here, who never says no. He says, what do you need? Christy Garrett, who's sitting out in the back, who is always looking at how do I promote and the big thinking that transpires. I know Dr. Cho, who went to our summit last year, and just being physically available as well. That this all, when California Indians come to our events and they see people, and they're saying, wait a minute, they're not saying no, they're saying yes. That's not, I'm understanding that that's not something that they're accustomed to hearing. And so, we work through that together, okay, because that's built up years of that distress that sometimes we have to work through. So on this October 9th, it's Indigenous Peoples Day, okay? October 12th is Indigenous Peoples Day, also known as my birthday. So it's on the calendar, which is wonderful. I just found out that Greg Castro, who is one of the originators, actually the brainchild of the summits that we've been putting together, he'll actually be here. I just got confirmation from him yesterday. You'll see some of the presenters that we have here. Dr. Michelle Lorimer, who is a adjunct professor down at CSU San Bernardino, will be joining us. And her publication, Resurrecting the Past, the California Mission Myth, was published by the Pechanga tribe. She's putting together a statewide curriculum, and they're with that working with California Indians up and down the state of California to give us their regional voice, and that all going on our website, which is now linked to the Department of Education. So that vision of how we can rehumanize ourselves and look at how we build our spiritual connection to one another is something that has been a very profound experience and a very humbling experience as well. And even with the missteps that go along the way, it's been an opportunity that for me it's been quite a privilege and something I appreciate very much to be able to do that here at Ground Zero for us here in California. So I understand I have a few minutes to have any discussion, any questions that people may have. Any questions? Yes, Dr. Hill.
Speaking from personal experience, how do you, what do you think the best approach is? I sent you some emails about this. My daughter just went through the whole 4th grade mission project and then having sort of ongoing conversations with teacher and principal. How do you recommend you go about that process of advocacy around these important issues?
That's a good question. What's fascinating is that there's now a new state framework, correct, Mimi, that has been adopted by the state of California, in which they're saying no more doing that mission project anymore. But it doesn't mean that you don't talk about the missions. It just means that you're going to talk about them in a way that is inclusive of the real experiences of what transpired there. And that's why these summits that we're having, for example, the one here, we've got about 60 people signed up. Most of them are 3rd and 4th grade teachers. So the fact that most of us here were subjected to that experience that your daughter has, we all have to be re-educated in a way that we can then pass it on to the next generation. Unfortunately, most teachers have not had that experience and don't even know what to say because they don't have the information. And that's why the summits are here, and that's why we have the posting on the website. I saw another, Pia, did you?
I had sort of a similar question. It seems terrific that we're infusing this into our credential program and maybe going through the subject matter project, which is like there are different networks that history, social studies teachers across the state. Are you connected with them?
Yes, and we're connected with the UC Davis History Project, Stacy Greer. Stacy will be with us on the 9th, and we're going to be hopefully hooking up and down the state of California. And we, by chance, we actually got launched even before there was the adoption of the new framework. So with that, we've already been able to collect some curriculum from the Kumeyaay, from the Loni, from the Winnemem Wintu, and so Miwok, we have curriculum already put together, but in some regions we may need to create it. Is where we're headed. Yes.
This is something I heard you and me talking about one day quite a while ago, but I was wondering, have you come up with any kind of suggestions for like alternative meaningful projects?
As opposed to the mission?
Yeah, as opposed to the mission. Like, what's an alternative project? Even that maybe a parent could say, hey, did you know that there's this alternative project?
Yeah, and those suggestions are being rolled out at the summits. And to recognize this one at Sac State, this is the second one that we will have sponsored here. 2 years ago, we had one over at UC Berkeley under the California Indian Conference. Then we went down to San Diego last year, and then we also had one over at the Rudolph Steiner College as well. So this is now like the 5th summit that we've had. Now that the state framework has now said you have to include the people who've been living here for like 10, 15,000 years. So now people are saying, well, we don't know anything of what happened before the Spanish arrived, and that's what we're having to put together. Okay, any other thoughts here? Questions? Yes, ma'am.
For 4th grade, I'm in 8th grade now. My teacher decided against the mission project for our year project, and instead we did a scrapbook of California, A through Z, and for each letter we had to choose something that was meaningful to California. So, what are your views on that as an alternative?
Well, it sounds like she was trying to avoid something that we've been wanting to take out of the curriculum to begin with. She did the best she could. I don't know what her resources were, but I appreciate the fact that she was looking to sidestep something that we know has been very painful. And so I think that was a step forward, and hopefully we can give her more resources in the future. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions before I hand this over to Dr. Brock?